Welcome to the Mission Driven Leader, presented by TaleoConnects.com, where we explore the new, unknown, and innovative themes for work and give people the ability to show up resilient every day. Here are your hosts, former Chief Knowledge Officer of NASA, Ed Hoffman, and partner and Vice President of Portfolio Management at Taleo, Laurel Sim.
Well, welcome, Ed, to the Mission Driven Leader. Of course, I'm making fun of you.
Yeah.
You're the guy with the big brain in the room. What am I supposed to be doing? Remember, I just got a PhD and show up. I don't actually have a PhD. So, but, the other day I was trying to figure out what to call you this week, and I was thinking, well, Dr. Ed would be fun, but Mr. Ed is way cooler because that's a horse. Okay, well, okay, yeah. I'll just leave it to Ed today then. Fine. Ed, I'm really excited about our guest today, and I'll tell you why. You know how frustrated I get with the word resiliency and how it's been overused, poorly used, poorly defined, how people have not taken it to the level that it needs to be taken in order to be successful with where they need to go. That's a big kicking point for me. So I'm really excited about our first guest coming on to see if she can sway me.
Well, I got to, in setting it up, I think resilience is one of the most important things. And my guess is that you're on the point of life, you're young, you're successful, you're talented, and you're driven.
Oh, tell me more.
So at this point, I think you're one of those people at this point, you just keep going. And, but the longer you're around, eventually you get to those stages, or at least I did, where, things start, falling apart, and there's a questioning, there's a wondering, and sometimes you deal with really serious events. So I think that for individuals, teams, resilience is really essential. And but even more than the work with Madelyn, who we'll be talking to shortly, as the setup for this, I'm a believer, and I know Madelyn's a believer, that you want to surround yourself by a team of people that you like to be with, that you get energized being with, that you feel good about the craziness in life. And that's what we have in terms of talking today with Madelyn Blair. So to me, that's all part of resilience, Laurel.
Yeah, and what's funny is I was doing a performance review with one of my team members a while back here, and it was less about resiliency and more about allowing them to know what they're capable of. And I think resiliency helps reinforce what you're capable of, but it shows up in a different format or a different way. And so I realized when I was sharing with them what I saw their future to be and how they could really show up to be who I see them every single day, that maybe we don't have enough of that in society. So at the end of today, I'm really excited to talk about what our mission challenge is really going to be for the people out there.
Yeah, and I'm going to save a story because I'm going to let Madelyn, once we get started, to talk about resilience, because I think Madelyn in her book, which we're giving away, Unlocked, it's a wonderful book. It's got a great introduction, but I think there's a lot there about resilience. But I know what you're talking about. There are words that we throw around, and then they become light and they become easy. But I think there are times that you run up into the wall, things change, there's disruption, stuff you can't handle. And how do you get back? And I think that's some of those tips there. And I do have at least to me, it's an emotionally engaging story. Because I was my career in the middle of my time at NASA, where I just thought I worked hard, I was smart, I was good at what I did, and success followed. And almost immediately after that, I went into a period where control was just lost. So I want to save that for maybe why that's so important to me. So, yeah.
So that is pretty exciting for me to hear that story, because I'm always looking to figure out how to show up a little bit better. When you said get back, I thought of the word baby got back. So that's different though, right? You're talking about something a little bit different there.
I don't know who "Baby Got Back" is. Is that a singer?
Oh, it's a song. Oh my God, I wish I could like just throw it on. Baby got back. Boop. No, okay. Anyways, moving on. All right, Eddie boy, why don't you introduce our guest?
I am a music snob. I think the best music was in the '60s, so I pretty much.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet then. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
I can see how things are going. That's why you're Poe. You're provocative.
I try.
It's my pleasure to introduce to your audience and to you, Laurel, Dr. Madelyn Blair. I mean, we've known each other for quite a while. I feel like I've known Madelyn for longer than we actually have. And I am a believer that you want to surround yourself by good people, by quality people, by people who provoke you to new levels. And so Madelyn, for me, is a friend, good friend, a colleague in terms of work, in terms of Columbia University, and for me, a mentor, and borderline spiritual guide in terms of moving forward. She's also a world-renowned speaker. She's an author. She's a mentor. She's faculty at the Columbia University's Information Knowledge Strategy program, and is someone who really helps make other people and other teams better. So she's very generous in her time. And she creates wonderful spaces, and I'll talk more about that later. So, Madelyn, thanks for being here. Your current book, you've written 5 books. Your current one is Unlocked, Discover How to Embrace the Unexpected. And let me first of all take time to welcome you. We've been talking.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ed. I always love talking with you, and I'm delighted to meet you, Laura, and hear the lovely ambiance that's created between the two of you.
Well, welcome. Like I said, I'm excited for you to re-inspire me into the resiliency of the future.
And so I want to hold off on the resilience because I think, at least maybe for me, when I first meet someone, and you have that moment where there's the connection. You want to be with that person. And for me with Madelyn, it was around story. And I think it was probably with Columbia, but you gave a session on story that to me just rocked the house because it created, I'm a lover of stories as we know, but it created a sense of meaning. It captivated folks. It was entertaining and enthralling, but it led to a sense of how do you really use stories to understand where we are. And so let me start with that, with how did you become so good at doing story and using story, and what is the story of just yourself getting here?
Oh, gosh. Let's see.
And I remember the first story, by the way, you told about the garden and your mom and...
the tulip story.
Yes.
It's a great story.
And it's not at all, it was totally unexpected. I didn't know at first, where are you going? And it was one of those things that, to an educated group of strategy people, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just brilliant. And
well, thank you. I hesitate to tell that story because it really is a part of a larger presentation, as you suggested, and it needs that linkage to make it happen. But I will tell you a story. Okay. And that is, because you asked me, how did I get started? I grew up on a farm, as many people know.
I love her already.
Yeah. And from the very beginning, I loved the natural environment. I mean, nature to me was just something fascinating. And I think I was about 13, 12, somewhere in there. And I decided that I was going to save and make a collection of seeds. Now, I know most people collect dolls or they collect baseball cards, but this was seeds because I got to the point where I could look at a seed and I could see the whole plant in it. And even to this day, I can look at a lot of seeds and see the full plant, and I can tell you what it is. Now, that's how I kind of got started. And I would never have imagined that would evolve to where I am today, which is to look at people, especially young people. I love to do it with young people, and just absorb them and see the seed in them. And then allow myself the opportunity, created or whatever, invite them to help me make that happen, to grow and flourish. And that's what I do now. And I hadn't actually seen that connection until very recently.
That's interesting because, again, in just those 30 seconds, there's a new part of you that I hadn't heard about before. And see,
No.
but it makes total sense that of all the things you do, there's many things, but I've always said when we work together, when working in Columbia, I always say, get Madelyn to help mentor or coach, develop the students when we get into those conversations. And that connection to seed and growing and development, I know is very personal to you because you really focus on, I'm always focusing on the team, the organizational, and you're always pulling it back down to the person and the individual. And I get that. And Laurel, you're on a farm, right? So how do you feel about seeds or
Yeah,
that connection?
I was able to actually see the seeds in your hand. I'm not going to lie to you, Madelyn. So it connected with me immediately.
I saw the seeds too. That's weird.
Yeah. It was quite magical. And what's really funny is that I often will tell people that have been on my teams, past, present, hopefully in the future, that I am just a stepping stone. So when you go along a riverbed on the farm or where have you, and you're trying to get across because you've got to get across, you're always looking for the stepping stone that's going to be the safest way to get you where you need to go. And it can be as simple as running through the water because there are no stones, or you can see the path that's going to step you through it. And I use that term regularly, that I just want to be the best stepping stone you've ever had to get to where you need to go. And I feel as though your seeds are that exact same visual for me, where we see the best in the people. And how are we going to help them to grow? How are we going to help them to achieve that? I think it's just because we're both brilliant farm girls, I think.
Probably.
Well, yeah, I think there's, I'm thinking about that. I grew up in the city, right, Brooks? And I remember when I first interviewed, when I went to Columbia, I didn't think they were going to accept me. I'm sure they weren't for the doctoral program. And I got asked the question of what is it would you like to research here? And I was 22. I didn't, what am I going to research, And what came out of my mouth, I've always been fascinated, I said, by how teams, with all the problems, with all the difficulties of accomplishing something, how do you build a bridge? How do you get a team to win? How do you set off a rocket ship with all different things? And, so it's a different kind of an angle. And I wonder almost if where we grew up, you focus on the land, right? Seeds, growing, development. I was surrounded by buildings and I saw conflict. I saw yelling. I saw things coming together. So it's interesting maybe how where we start takes us in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we definitely saw less horn honking at the farm, Ed. I'm not going to lie.
Really?
A lot less. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to get into resilience because Laurel's a skeptic.
That's
and,
right.
I would never put anybody up to trying to convince Laurel of anything. But tell us about the importance, Madelyn, of resilience. What is it? And how do you create your own space to move forward when you're dealing with challenges?
To me, let me first say, I began thinking about the issue of resilience when I did some work on the book that I published just before that called Riding the Current, which is all about how adults take in fresh knowledge. I interviewed people all over the world, and I saw within that group a subset of extraordinary individuals. I mean, they were people who had pivoted at the age of 50, or one had actually recovered from an attempted suicide. I mean, these are people who were resilient. So I looked at what they were, and did they have common characteristics? And they had 3 common characteristics. They knew who they were. They knew who they were. The second was they had some in-depth knowledge of something. In one case, the man said, I know how to build a ukulele. In another, he said, I know how to build a house. All different kinds of things, but they had that, in other words, a frame. And the third thing was they were insatiably curious. And I said, those are things that anybody can develop. So if that's what resilient people have, clearly we can develop those. But I want to come back to your question, Laura, which is, what is this thing called resilience? And when I looked back on moments in my life when I really had to call upon my resilience, I mean, literally from one time when I fell on a sidewalk, but then there was the other time when my daughter in her 20s had a fatal, well, not fatal, fortunately, but a brain tumor that would have been fatal. I mean, those are times when you have to draw upon it. And I was reading Viktor Frankl, a very famous psychologist, and he said between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies the power for us to choose our response. And I went, by golly, we see the response and we call that resilience, but the resilience happens in that space where you've got to choose. And so resilience is that choice, that moment when you say, I choose to do this, to move myself forward, to get to the next step, to persist in what I'm doing. So that to me is where persistence lies.
Well, I think I have to tell you that you might have won me over. And the reason you might have won me over, the first parts were things that show up on a regular basis of, knowing who you are and being curious and knowing what you can do and all of those things. But it's actually actively participating in making the choice.
Yes.
And I think we have lost that. Not everybody. I certainly have. I'm moving through choices every day because I want to jump ahead. I want to take another step to get to that moon that Ed's going to take me to. But I make those choices, and I make the hard ones, and I don't always want to make them, but I do it. And I think that's what we've lost here. What are your thoughts on kind of maybe not generalizing, but generalizing where society is showing up these days?
Well, I think in many ways, our agency, our sense of power has been taken away from us. Or we gave it away. Or maybe we don't even recognize it. And so it kind of lies dormant. And to me, and in fact, one of the practices that I recommend people do is every day decide the most important thing you're going to do that day. And people say, well, what does that have to do with resilience? Well, if you have to make a tough decision every day, and that is a tough decision if you really want to think about all the things that impinge on you, and you say, this is the most important thing I'm going to do, that's practice in making a decision. It's practice in taking agency. So I think in general, we have the capacity. It's just that we've let it lie. And there are so many options for us these days that it's so easy to be able to exist without making big decisions, but not the important ones.
I think that, the word that you used that I think for me resonates so much around you is choice.
Yeah.
And you talked about, the work of what is it that carries people, riding the current. Unlocked, your newest work, to me now makes even more sense because it's about people taking choices with the reality that things aren't going to go as planned, right? Mm-hmm. The unexpected, aspect of that. And I would start, I guess, with a question for yourself. You're an executive leader at the World Bank, faculty at Columbia University, working with major organizations. What is it about those environments that also maybe provided you with a sense of taking choice, taking control, and dealing with some of the unexpected events that you had to overcome? Is there anything that you think, led you to this focus on mentoring, developing others, nurturing others, and the sheer importance of not just going the road, but making the choice going forward.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the World Bank because that was is an extraordinary place. You meet people from more than 100 different countries. You hear at least that many languages spoken during a day. It's remarkable, and it has a culture all its own. And you suddenly were confronted with how do you help a group of people accomplish a mission, and yet respect the fact that they come from different cultures and have different values, and that being able to do that. I mean, I had a division of almost 70 people, and over the course of the time that I was their head, they always met objectives. They always were in budget, and they tested out at the 90th percentile of the attitude survey. So they were happy people. They were productive people. Our customers, our clients loved us. So when I looked at that, I said, I know something. I'm doing something, even if I'm doing it unconsciously. That was one really big point, which I think was what you're asking, Ed.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Madeline, I think this is a good time for us just to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I know Ed has a burning question to ask you, which is, what is your favorite chocolate bar? Because his is the Milky Way, and he couldn't figure out if that was a NASA thing or just a really great chocolate bar. So I'm on pins and needles to hear the answer when we come back.
So am I. Yeah.
We'll get back to the rest of the episode in just a moment. But first, a word from our presenting sponsor, TaleoConnects.com. As a manager, you know how important it is to solve issues right the first time. If you don't, you risk wasting precious time, money, and resources on things that could make the problem even worse. That is why at Taleo, we start by getting to the root cause of your specific problem, so that together, we can implement the solution that gets you the results you are looking for the first time. Taleo's unique approach to management consulting and resourcing is focused on building a community of experts that work together to help clients solve complex problems and find success in their businesses. We work collaboratively with you to implement the solution that will solve the root cause of your problem, not just the symptoms of that problem. From management consulting and project management to staff augmentation and resource recruitment, Taleo's trusted team can help you take your organization to the next level. If you're interested in learning more about how Taleo can help you overcome your organization's obstacles and take your business to the next level, visit TaleoConnects.com today.
All right, we are back with Madelyn Blair, and we are just so excited to have you here with us, Madelyn. Ed, we've had lots of really great conversations about how to create space for your practice on making decisions. I've learned what a good story allows a group to actually see and how it makes them feel. One of the questions that I have for Madelyn right now, though, is talking about that curiosity that you were talking about a little bit earlier, and how do you educate others to create space for that curiosity, to allow for that opportunity to exist? It's not an easy thing.
You know, Laura, I love the fact that you speak about creating the space for it. I really like that. Because it's a perfect metaphor. You're really creating the opportunity for them to explore their curiosity. Okay, how do you do that? First, I think there are two things. One is that you ask questions. And that secondly, you answer the questions that are being asked of you with the intention of responding honestly. I mean, those two things alone begins the process. But then there are other things that you need to do. For example, when I teach, I say to my students, I will ask you questions. Never am I asking you a question to critique what you're doing. I'm asking you questions because Dr. Blair needs more information. And it's amazing. I would say within a week or two, those students have changed and they begin asking questions because they know there's not going to be any criticism, there's not going to be any retribution. It's just that we want to get more information. They become more creative, they learn better, their minds are open. It's so simple. Now, managers, leading a team in business, you have to do a few more things. But that was my student example.
I think that's, I'll let Ed jump in here in a second, but that was a big aha moment for me just now because I ask questions because I'm a painfully curious human and to the point where my husband, I think, would wish I wasn't so curious anymore. But I ask a lot of questions because I do want to learn more. And we forget that not everybody has that simple view of why the question's being asked, right? That there's an ulterior motive.
They have an agenda.
In some. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I want to follow up on that because I know some of the research Madelyn is doing right now is around personal knowledge, and it's at the early stage. What's the importance of personal knowledge, and what tips can you give to people to be good at it? And I know this is early, but I think everything you're talking about, choice, you're talking about questions, resilience. It implies, obviously, kind of maybe a next stage that you're going towards, which is how do we get the capabilities to appreciate that? So I wanted to give a chance to hear from you on that.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to tell you that I love Ghirardelli chocolate. Let's get that out.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's not the Milky Way, Ed. It might be a NASA thing. It might be. I don't know.
No, Milky Way I left a long time ago.
Yeah.
Ghirardelli. Okay. Now, what was that question you asked me?
Yeah, we got onto chocolate, and we're all we're lost at this point. It's about knowledge. It's about choice. Yes. I think through personal knowledge. I know you have a lot of interest in. We've had this discussion about it's so important for people to develop the capability to build their own knowledge and their network. And how would you approach that at the very beginning, building personal knowledge?
Okay. First of all, when I work with people, and I have worked with people on this particular issue, I ask them to spend some time thinking about why they want to do this. Because the only reason that you're going to go pursue something is that you have a motivation to do it. Like you, Laura, you're curious and you just keep pushing. Okay, that's a reason for doing it. Sometimes you have to learn something that maybe you're not curious about, but it's really important to you for some other reason. So that motivation is really important, that they get grounded in that. And after that, there's just so many ways that you can approach it. But I like the thing that you said, Ed, about surrounding yourself with the right kind of people. Because if you surround yourself with people who are curious and open-minded, they will just keep you and reinforce you to be open-minded and learning all the time.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You want to overstack that with positive spirits, and we're not talking about people who agree, right? A lot of my best friends they tell me all the time what I'm doing wrong or that I'm eating the wrong chocolate bar. But it's surrounding yourself with that sense you can do, and you're going to take on the mission and creating a story of one that's positive. So I think we agree with that. How do you go about creating that kind of a team, though? Because I know one of your the areas that you talked about on Unlocked is be very clear on who you bring on your team. I didn't say it the way you wrote it, but it's this notion that you need to have support. You need to identify people. You need to get that kind of social support to move forward. Mm-hmm. How do you go about selecting who's part of Team Blair?
Okay. In my book, I admit that I found 3 characteristics of these unusual people. But there is, in fact, a fourth one that I learned from research. I didn't ask the question of the people at the time, so I didn't know whether they had a good social support, but it was very clear afterwards that you have to have social support. You have to have people who will support you when you're in a tough situation. Now, how do you get onto Team Blair?
Yeah.
Boy,
You may
nobody
not want
asked
to
me
give
that
this
question.
out, though.
Yeah,
You may-
like he's actually asking for me so that I can get on your team. So this was a favor call out before the session even started.
Ah, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Okay.
I want to get on your team.
Okay. What I look for are people who are open-minded. And by open-minded, I mean that they are willing to sit in ambiguity and tolerate that, and to sit in discomfort and tolerate that, and to think their way through it. That gives me a lot of grace that I can do stupid things as well as brilliant things. And I know that they're going to take that all into account and not judge me immediately on that one thing. It gives me freedom. And when we feel that kind of support, I think we become much more who we are. I'm a great believer in the seed, that there is a seed in there and that it's blossoming. That's what life is about, is allowing yourself to blossom. And so to me, that's the first thing. They have to be open-minded. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
So I know I told you earlier that I just finished talking to one of my team members about, the challenges that I've got set for them in their performance for their coming year. And one of them was being okay with ambiguity. Try to feed that beast, because it's not going to hurt you. It's going to create strength in you. Yeah. And I think I can make it to your team. Like, I just need the ladder. Show me the ladder. Like,
Don't
there's
get
something
desperate,
there.
Laurel. Don't get desperate.
Oh, was that desperate? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go over the top with my needs. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate that. So we are getting closer to the end of our talk with you. And one question that I've committed to always asking our guests is, what do you feel is your special gift that you either water every day, or you haven't been watering and you're going to have to figure out how to start watering it? How would you reflect on that for us, Madelyn?
When I applied to graduate school, this was before my PhD. So I was applying to MBA school, and I filled out the application to go to Wharton. I eventually went to Wharton. They asked you the three most important things to you. It turned out I don't remember the first one. I don't remember the third one, but I remember the second one. And I learned later that the admissions people only counted the middle one. They only counted the second one. And it turned out in mine, it was beauty. Beauty is very important to me. It's one of the things that I pursue in just about everything I do. And I water it every day, just by living in a beautiful environment that I keep that way and attend to. Whether it's through watering plants or, selecting beautiful art, whatever it is, wearing interesting clothes. This is a heiora, a real Japanese heiora.
Looks lovely.
Thank you. Here, you can see it better this way.
Oh, there we go.
I have to now change my outfit for the future. I realize I clearly don't think about beauty. Although, and I have to say this, of all the places I've been, I think, Madelyn, your home is one of the most wonderful, spiritually connecting places I've ever been. And this is where it's hard you can't describe anything. You really have to experience it. But we love going to your home, and it's, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's artistically arranged. There's a flow to it. And there are always spots that I will end up with, often just by myself, that it just takes me to a different place. So I see the importance of space and beauty, for you, because that comes through consistently, including in the meals. When the meals, not only are they wonderful meals, but it looks beautiful. So.
Well, Madeline, I don't recommend you allowing Ed to be alone in your home anymore because that sounded a little fishy. But outside of that, I do look forward to you cooking me a meal sometime.
Okay, well, you're on.
Was that too desperate again, Ed? I don't know how to
that's good.
turn it off. Okay.
Now it allows us to say, when are you coming up to Maryland?
That's exactly what's going to be
Yeah.
my question.
I am ready. I am ready. Well, as we shared earlier, we are going to be giving your book away to people as they comment on this podcast. So that will be a gift for your book, Unlock, Discover How to Embrace the Unexpected. Is there any small tidbit that you'd like to share with us for the audience to get excited for their special treat at their doorstep?
Well, I think that the treat, I would say, or the special, is that I present 5 practices in my book. And by the way, a practice is not something you do for the sake of the practice. The practice is something you do for a distant goal, like, playing the scales on the piano so that you can go walk into the concert hall and play what you need to play. Of those 5 practices, every one of them is efficacious, would be the right word. They are useful, they work, and they work independently. But when you start combining them, there's a real synergy that happens across them, and it can really be quite transformative in terms of your resilience. So that would be my.
Do you want to mention quickly the 5 practices, or they're evocative to hear some of them? Or,
Okay.
I mean, story is obviously one.
Story
that
is one.
engages me. You don't call it this, but the social connection, the practice of social relationships, and there's one that I don't practice that much on. I'm with you, but the practice of silence.
Yes, that's the first one. Spend 5 minutes a day in silence. And
Yeah.
what it really means is uninterrupted time, so that you have a chance to really think creatively. The second is to write that story, and to write a personal story from your life where you are the hero, and you write it. And it doesn't matter whether it's 5 minutes ago or when you were 5. All of those build you and inform who you are. The third one is to build your social network. Call somebody. I had a few minutes before this podcast, and so I called a friend just to keep those relationships going. The fourth one is to ask a question every day. Ask a question. It doesn't have to be an important question, and it doesn't even have to be a question that you will ever answer. It's just piquing your curiosity, and keep honing that. And the last one is to each day pick the most important thing for you to do that day and do it.
Those are amazing. The one about silence, I think my husband would be most appreciative of. But in all seriousness, at the end of each of our podcasts, we do a call out to our viewers on what are you going to do to drive your mission, and what does that look like? Ed, from your perspective, what are the key things that you took away from today that you're gonna challenge everybody on to drive out?
I don't like to challenge others. I like to challenge myself. It's interesting. I always, when I think of Madeline, when we talk, I think of the social part, and I think the story immediately comes to mind, and the seeking others, the seeking things out. I tend to forget the silence. And yet, that in some ways, that may be the most important thing. When I got to NASA, a very quick story, the most important thing we needed to do to really create more improved project management and leadership was creating spaces and time, giving permission for people to just reflect and to have time by themselves. And I'd get people coming up to me saying, "You're not giving us time to think." And that that extroverted part of me is, I like hearing things, I like noises, I like moving, I like doing things. And so that is the thing that I was thinking about. Yeah, I forgot the silence part of and how vital that is. I think that may be the biggest issue, I think, in organizations.
And you know what, Ed? There are simple ways in which leaders can insert silence. And it's not by saying we're going to take 5 minutes to be quiet. It's by sending out a question before a meeting and say, think about this question
Right.
when you come to the meeting. It changes the dynamics of the meeting completely.
Yeah, I think that's so vital. And that's, again, we the first goal when we figured out what we were doing at NASA on the project knowledge part was to indicate we wanted to create reflective leaders and practitioners. And that reflective part was so spot on. So I think that's, and it also connects me to, again, not to overdo it, your home. Because there are places where, like I said, when I'm roaming around by myself, it just, there's some connection there when it's in the right place. So I think that's interesting that you mentioned that.
I also truly appreciate the practice of making a decision and asking a question. I think the two go hand in hand. And I do it on a daily basis, but do I do it with intention all of the time? I don't believe so. And so I'm absolutely going to take that one away and put it in my pocket and make sure that I show up with it the next day. Yeah, great. So thank you for that. I really appreciate your time with us today, Madelyn. You've been an absolute treat, and not just because you're a farm girl like me, not just because you're brilliant as an educator and a leader in society, but mostly because you can make fun of Ed with me, and it's just smooth as butter.
Well, thank you, Laura and Ed.
Great. Well, tune in, everybody. Please make comments on this podcast so you can get this unlocked, Discover How to Embrace the Unexpected by Madelyn.
And you're going to want this book. So even if you don't get it, you should get it because it's a book you can live in. And you'll figure that out as you go through it. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, Madelyn.
Take care.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Driven Leader podcast presented by TaleoConnects.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to the show. Production of the podcast is by @Heart Creative and can be found at @HeartCreative.com.